The sun had sunk behind the rolling hills, leaving the small town of Harlow Ridge bathed in a cold, fading orange. Officer Jacob Hayes tightened the leash on his canine, Rex, who was already straining against the tension, nose pressed to the earth in an empty, wind-swept field. The air was thick with the scent of damp soil, and something primal in Rex's behavior made Jacob's stomach twist. He had walked these fields countless times, but tonight the dog's frantic digging felt urgent, almost desperate. When Rex's claws hit something solid beneath the dirt, Jacob froze, heart hammering. Whatever was buried here was not meant to be found. The wind whispered across the empty field like a warning, tugging at the edges of Jacob Hayes' worn jacket. The long stretch of farmland had been abandoned for decades, the old fences sagging under the weight of time, wild grass swaying in restless waves. He had been called to check on reports of strange noises near the outskirts of Harlow Ridge, a quiet town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets ran deep beneath the surface. Rex, his German shepherd, moved like a shadow beside him, ears pricked, tail stiff, every muscle coiled with anticipation. The dog's nose was low to the ground, scraping at the earth, leaving shallow trenches that glinted darkly under the dimming light. Jacob felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Something about the dog's insistence unsettled him. He had seen Rex detect everything from narcotics to hidden weapons, but this was different. There was urgency, fear even, in the way Rex pawed at the ground. "Rex, what is it, boy?" Jacob murmured, trying to mask the edge in his voice. His heart thumped against his ribs. The field stretched out like a frozen sea, quiet except for the occasional rustle of weeds and the distant crow of a lone rooster from a neighboring farm. "Come on, Rex. Let's see what you found." The dog ignored him, digging faster, dirt flying in arcs. Jacob crouched, brushing a hand over Rex's fur. The dog's body tensed violently, teeth bared in a low growl. Something hard struck Rex's paw. Jacob squinted, leaning closer. The soil crumbled away to reveal the corner of a box, old and weathered, partially buried beneath the muck. Jacob's fingers brushed over it carefully. His pulse quickened. "Rex, good boy." He straightened and looked around. No one, only the wind, the empty field, and the long shadows stretching across the land. He knew the box wasn't just trash. Something about it radiated wrongness, a cold weight of secrecy that made his stomach knot. He dragged the box out carefully, brushing off the clinging dirt. The wood was damp, splintered, with deep gouges that suggested it had been hidden in a hurry. The lock, rusted but intact, gleamed faintly under his flashlight as the sun dipped further behind the horizon. Jacob felt a chill. He had seen his share of crime scenes, but instinct told him this was personal. Someone wanted whatever was inside to remain buried forever. "You ever get tired of secrets, Rex?" he muttered, a small, bitter laugh escaping. The dog whined softly, nudging the box with his nose. It was almost like he understood. Almost. Jacob called it in a routine report, abandoned object in remote field. But he didn't mention the unease gnawing at him, the sense that opening this box could unravel things far beyond a missing item or a simple act of concealment. By the time backup arrived, darkness had fully descended, painting the field in shades of black and gray. The beam of his flashlight caught the outlines of the approaching squad car, headlights slicing the night. Officer Linda Marks stepped out first, hands tucked into her coat, her brow furrowed. "Jacob, what have you found?" Jacob gestured at the box. "Something buried here. Rex led me to it. I'm telling you, Linda, this doesn't feel like just old junk." She knelt, examining it. Her expression shifted, a mix of curiosity and unease. "That's not a typical field find. Where did you say you found it?" Jacob pointed to the spot Rex had clawed at frantically. "Right there. Dug out myself." He straightened. "Feels wrong. Like someone didn't want it found." Linda touched the corner of the box, her fingers brushing the damp wood. "We'll need to get this back to the station. Forensics. See if it's tied to anything recent." She hesitated, then added, softer, "Jacob, you okay? You look tense." He shrugged, trying to mask the trembling in his hands. "Just this dog. He's not wrong about things. Feels like trouble." As they loaded the box into the trunk, Jacob couldn't shake the sense of being watched. The empty field, with its wild grass and scattered debris, had seemed almost alive in the fading light. Every shadow looked like a figure, every rustle like a whisper of warning. He kept glancing at Rex, who now sat obediently in the car, ears twitching at every distant sound. By the time they arrived at the station, the box had taken on a gravity that pressed down on Jacob's chest. Forensics would check it, yes, but he knew that what waited inside could change everything he thought he knew about Harlow Ridge. Its people, its history, its hidden darkness. Later that night, Jacob sat at his desk, staring at the empty field outside the station's windows. Streetlights cast long, skeletal shadows, the occasional passing car rattling along cracked asphalt. Rex rested his head on his paws, eyes flicking between Jacob and the locked evidence room where the box now sat. Jacob rubbed his temples. He thought about the old stories, whispered rumors about disappearances, old grudges, a town that seemed idyllic on the surface but had teeth beneath. He had always prided himself on seeing clearly, reading between lines others missed. But tonight, a nagging doubt gnawed at him. What if the field wasn't just a field? What if the earth itself had swallowed more than just soil, but pieces of people, memories, sins meant to stay buried? The phone on his desk buzzed. A text from Chief Warner. Heard about the field. Keep me updated. Don't let this get out of hand. Jacob's thumb hovered over the screen. Out of hand? He thought. Out of hand had already begun the moment Rex's paws hit that hidden box. He leaned back, eyes closing briefly. Memories he hadn't thought about in years surfaced. Cases unsolved, bodies never found, the sickening twist of betrayal among colleagues he had trusted. And beneath it all, a fear rooted deep in his gut, that some secrets were not just dangerous, they were contagious. One small uncovering, one prying hand, could set off a chain reaction no one could stop. Rex stirred, whining softly. Jacob opened his eyes and glanced down. The dog's gaze was unwavering, intense, unblinking. The kind of gaze that said, "We're not done here. Not by a long shot." Jacob reached over, scratching behind Rex's ears. "I know, buddy," he whispered. "I know we've just scratched the surface. Whatever's in there, it's only the beginning." And in the distance, the wind carried a sound he didn't recognize at first, a low, dragging noise, like something being pulled through the dirt. It came from the very field they had just left. Jacob froze. The hair on his arm stood on end. Rex lifted his head, ears forward, teeth bared in a low growl. The sound stopped. Silence fell again. But Jacob knew better. Silence in Harlow Ridge didn't last. He didn't sleep that night. Morning broke over Harlow Ridge in a thin, gray drizzle that made the streets shimmer with wet asphalt. Jacob Hayes walked through the station, the rhythmic tap of his boots echoing off the walls. Rex padded beside him, ears twitching at every distant sound. The hum of fluorescent lights, the low rumble of far-off tractor, the faint murmur of radio chatter. The town felt smaller in the rain, as if the gray sky were pressing down, warning him that the day would be unlike any other. Jacob poured coffee into a chipped mug, hands shaking slightly. Forensics had secured the box overnight, running preliminary scans and swabbing the surfaces. But no one had opened it yet. That meant he had time to think, to unravel the growing knot of anxiety in his gut. The whispers from the empty field hadn't left him, even in daylight. The air seemed heavier, dense with secrets. Linda Marks entered the room, shaking water from her hood. "You look like hell," she said, dropping into the chair opposite him. Her dark eyes held concern and something else, caution, as if she were trying to gauge how much Jacob could handle. "Still thinking about last night?" Jacob nodded. "Can't stop. Something about that field. Rex knew it. He always knows." He hesitated, then added, "There's more buried there, I think. More than just a box." Linda leaned back, fingers drumming on the table. "You really think someone's hiding something? Here." He swallowed hard. "Not think. I know. Harlow Ridge has its bones. Just like every small town. People who'd rather the past stay dead." Rex whined softly, pressing against Jacob's leg. He looked down at the dog and forced a small smile. "I don't know what we're walking into, buddy, but it's not going to be easy. The first forensic report came in mid-morning. Jacob and Linda huddled over the small monitor in the lab. The box contained a tightly wrapped bundle, fabric darkened with age, and inside, unmistakably, human remains. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. "God!" she whispered. Her voice trembled. That's decades old. Looks like it's been here a long time." Jacob's jaw tightened. He forced himself to look at the screen, at the bones that told a story of violence and concealment. "Decades," he muttered. "Someone buried them and thought no one would ever find out." The report detailed anomalies, fractures, evidence of blunt trauma, and a small metallic object hidden in the folds of the fabric. A locket, tarnished but intact. Jacob's stomach churned. He knew locket meant personal. Someone knew these people. Someone had motive, anger, maybe revenge. Linda broke the silence. "You think this is connected to the old Whitaker case?" Jacob froze. That case had haunted him. 3 children had disappeared from Harlow Ridge nearly 20 years ago. Despite every effort, no bodies had ever been found. Their names had become folklore, whispered warnings to kids who wandered too far. He hadn't considered a link before, but now everything pointed to it. I don't know yet," he said slowly, "but we need to find out who did this. And why now?" The day blurred into a series of interviews, revisiting old records, and talking to residents who remembered the Whitakers. Every conversation carried a subtle tension. People avoiding eye contact, hands wringing, voices low. Some seemed eager to help, while others, Jacob noticed, shifted uncomfortably, their gaze sliding to Rex as if the dog could see their guilt. By late afternoon, Jacob and Linda decided to return to the field. They needed context, evidence of how deep the secrets ran. The rain had eased, leaving the earth damp and sticky. Rex bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tracing invisible trails in the mud. Jacob crouched, studying a shallow trench Rex had made near the box's original location. Something glittered in the dirt. He knelt, brushing away soil to reveal a fragment of photograph, torn, water-damaged, but unmistakably a child's face. The eyes, they were hauntingly familiar. His pulse quickened. This could be one of them," he whispered, more to himself than Linda. She crouched beside him, face pale. Jacob's mind raced. If this was part of the Whitaker case, someone had meticulously hidden evidence for decades, right under the town's nose. And Rex had found it by instinct. As night fell, Jacob returned to the station, carrying the photograph and the locket. Rex sat in the corner, head tilted, as if judging his human companion. Jacob's thoughts refused to quiet. Every street, every neighbor suddenly seemed suspicious. Every handshake, every nod, could be a mask hiding guilt. And then came the first betrayal. Chief Warner called a meeting late that evening. Jacob entered the cramped office, his senses on high alert. Warner's normally steady demeanor carried a strain. "Jacob," he began, voice measured, "I know you've uncovered something serious. But be careful. There are people who don't want this investigated." Jacob blinked, confusion cutting through the adrenaline. "People in Harlow Ridge?" Warner's eyes flicked to Linda, who shifted uneasily. "You have friends here. You have colleagues you trust. But trust can be fragile. Don't let emotions cloud judgment." Jacob left the meeting with a sinking feeling. The box, the bones, the locket, it wasn't just about the past. It was about power. Secrets buried long ago had supporters, enablers, maybe even protectors within the police department itself. And someone had just reminded him that digging up the past could be dangerous. The next morning, Jacob found Rex barking at the station's back entrance. He ran outside to see a shadowy figure slipping away into fog. The figure was tall, coat collar turned up, and in the fading light, Jacob couldn't make out the face. By the time he reached the corner, there was nothing, only footprints in the wet ground. Too many, leading in every direction. A note had been left pinned to the station's bulletin board. "Some things are buried for a reason. Stop now." Jacob's hands shook as he read it. Linda appeared behind him, voice low. "They're serious." Jacob nodded, determination hardening. "I know, but we can't stop. Not now. Not when Rex led us here." Not when the truth is right in front of us. The next few days brought mounting tension. The town, once sleepy and predictable, became a web of paranoia. Jacob noticed faces peering from curtains, cars parked too long at the wrong corners, and strangers asking questions that didn't seem coincidental. Someone was watching every move. And then a breakthrough, but not the kind Jacob wanted. Forensics confirmed the locket contained a tiny photograph of the Whitaker parents, etched on metal, dating back over 20 years. Whoever had buried the children hadn't just hidden the bodies. They had left a signature, a taunt. Someone wanted the discovery to be personal. Someone wanted it found. Jacob's mind reeled. Who could orchestrate this after 2 decades? Who could plan a revelation so meticulously? And why lead it to him, a man with a dog and a stubborn sense of justice? Late that night, Jacob found himself back at the empty field. The air was still, almost too quiet. Rex sniffed at the ground, alert, ears forward. Jacob traced his steps back to the original dig site. Something felt off. The soil had been disturbed again. Fresh. Jacob's breath caught. He reached down, brushing aside the earth. Beneath it lay another box, smaller this time. The lock had been pried open, the contents removed, but a single item remained. A child's shoe, old and worn, dirt-stained. A metallic click echoed behind him. Jacob spun. A figure stood in the shadows, hands raised in mock surrender, face obscured by the hood of a coat. "You shouldn't be here," the voice said, low and calm. "You're digging where you don't belong." Jacob felt every muscle tense. "Who are you? Show yourself." The figure stepped closer, revealing a scar across one cheek, eyes that gleamed with something between amusement and menace. "I'm someone who knows what happens when bones are moved," the voice said, "and I don't like strangers stirring up the past." Rex growled, low and menacing, stepping in front of Jacob. The figure laughed softly. "That dog, smart creature. You two make quite the team. But even dogs can't save you from history." Jacob's heart hammered. "What do you want from me?" The figure smiled, cold and precise. "I want the truth to stay buried. But since you insist, be careful. Not everyone around you can be trusted, not even those closest to you." Before Jacob could respond, the figure disappeared into the fog, leaving only the echo of their footsteps. Jacob sank to the ground, chest heaving, Rex at his side, eyes scanning the darkness. Betrayal. Secrets. Threats. The Whitaker case had never truly ended. It had only been waiting. Waiting for someone stubborn enough and foolish enough to unearth it. He knew one thing with certainty. Nothing in Harlow Ridge would ever be the same again. And the deeper he dug, the darker it would get. The fog rolled over Harlow Ridge like a living thing, curling through alleyways, wrapping around the streetlights, and settling over the fields where Jacob and Rex had first uncovered the box. Sleep had eluded him for nights, the events of the past week gnawing at his mind. Every shadow in the station seemed darker now, every familiar face potentially hiding secrets. Jacob walked slowly toward the empty field, Rex padding silently beside him. The earlier warning had left him shaken, but he had made a decision. He would see this through. He had to know who had buried the Whitaker children, who had orchestrated decades of deceit, and why someone had left a final taunt for him to find. The field was quieter than ever, the fog thick enough to make shapes appear human when they weren't. Jacob knelt at the spot of the first box. His hands brushed against the damp soil, feeling the imprint of Rex's frantic digging. Then something caught his eye. Footprints. Not fresh like the previous intruders, but older, deeper, etched into the earth as if someone had walked this field hundreds of times, revisiting a secret they never wanted disturbed. Rex growled softly, a low rumble in his chest. Jacob straightened, eyes scanning the mist. Something moved, a figure emerging slowly, careful, deliberate. His breath caught. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face he knew far too well. Officer Mark Denby, a colleague he had trusted, a friend for years. "Mark." Jacob's voice was a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What are you doing here?" Denby's expression was unreadable, lips pressed tight. "I should ask you the same, Jacob. You have no idea what you've stirred." Jacob's hands flexed into fists. "I was following the truth." "You? Why are you?" He swallowed. Why are you involved in this? Denby's eyes darkened, guilt and calculation worn behind them. You think you're the first to find something buried? The Whitaker case, it wasn't just an accident. People made choices. Hard choices. Choices that protected the town and people we cared about. Jacob stepped back, stunned. You buried children to protect the town? His voice cracked. To protect who? Denby's jaw tightened. Some things are worse than lies. Some things could destroy everything you love if they get out. I did what I thought was right at the time. You weren't there. You wouldn't understand. Rex barked sharply, stepping between them. Denby's eyes flicked to the dog, a flash of fear crossing his face. Jacob noticed it immediately, a crack in the armor. You're lying, Jacob said quietly, tone sharp. You didn't just protect the town. You protected yourself. You knew people would go to jail, lose everything. You chose to hide it, and you killed any chance of justice. Denby's face hardened. I didn't kill anyone, he snapped. I buried them because no one else would, because if the bodies were found, then the town would have fallen apart. The Whitakers were complicated, dangerous. They had secrets of their own. You can't see the whole picture, Jacob. You can't. Jacob felt rage boil beneath his skin, but also a cold, sinking horror. Years of trust, of camaraderie, of shared duty, collapsed in the fog around him. He looked down at Rex, who stood rigid, growling low. The dog's instincts were clear. Denby had been at the center of this darkness for decades. Suddenly, a noise, subtle at first, then louder, came from the nearby trees. Someone else was there, and it wasn't Denby. From a mist emerged a second figure. Claire Whitaker, the surviving member of the Whitaker family, now grown, eyes hollow but piercing. Jacob's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to be alive, to have returned to this cursed place. Claire, he whispered. She ignored him, focusing on Denby. You thought you could bury us, erase us from history? You thought hiding our bodies would hide your guilt. Her voice was ice. Rage and sorrow twisted together in a way Jacob had never heard. Denby stepped back, fear flashing across his face. Claire, you stole my siblings from me. Claire shouted, voice echoing through the field. And you let the town pretend we never existed. You're a coward, Mark Denby. A coward hiding behind authority and lies. Rex barked again, protective, growling at Denby. Jacob reached for the dog's collar, keeping him steady, heart-hammering. The confrontation escalated, truth spilling into the fog. Denby confessed. He had buried the Whitaker children, yes, but under orders from influential town elders who feared scandal and collapse. He had tried to protect Harlow Ridge, to maintain order, but at the cost of innocence, at the cost of lives. Claire knelt near the first box, fingers trembling as she touched the soil. You'll never understand the pain of losing everything you love because of cowardice, she whispered. Her grief was palpable, so raw that Jacob felt it burn through him. The final revelation hit when Denby, desperate and cornered, admitted another betrayal. He had tried to manipulate Jacob, sending the cryptic warning notes and leaving footprints in the fog, testing whether Jacob would stop before the town's darkest secrets were unearthed. Every moment of fear, every shadow in the mist had been orchestrated to intimidate him. Jacob's stomach twisted with disgust. He had trusted Denby for years. They had worked cases together, laughed together, shared the burdens of law enforcement. And now, the betrayal was complete. Claire finally stood, tears streaking her face, eyes locking on Jacob. I need to know something, she said softly, voice trembling. Will you see this through? Will you make sure the truth is known? Jacob met her gaze, silence stretching in the mist. He could feel Rex shifting beside him, alert, waiting. I will, he said finally, voice steady despite the storm inside him. No more lies. No more hiding. For the first time in days, the fog seemed thin, the wind less oppressive. The truth was out, raw, jagged, painful, but was no longer buried. Weeks later, the investigation shook Harlow Ridge to its core. Denby was suspended, facing prosecution, and the town's elders were forced into the light. The Whitaker children were finally given proper memorials, the soil of the empty field holding both their secrets and their justice. Jacob often returned to the field, standing quietly as Rex sniffed at the ground. There was a heavy peace in the air, a quiet understanding that some wounds would never fully heal, but that justice, even delayed, mattered. He remembered the moment when Rex had first pawed at the earth, revealing the buried box. That instinct had changed everything. Sometimes, he thought, the simplest truths, the loyal, unflinching presence of a dog, could pierce the deepest darkness humans try to hide. Claire would visit often, each time bringing quiet warmth and a reminder of the past, however painful, could coexist with fragile hope. Jacob understood now that some betrayals were permanent, some scars unhealable, but confronting the truth, standing against deception, could create a new kind of strength, one born of courage, integrity, and the loyalty of a friend who never wavered. On a crisp evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jacob and Rex stood at the edge of the field. The soil had been turned, the grass flattened, the echoes of decades of silence finally given voice. Jacob knelt, brushing a hand over Rex's fur. "Good boy," he whispered. Rex looked up at him, ears perked, tail wagging faintly. In the quiet of the empty field, justice had finally been unearthed, and in the lingering shadows, the town of Harlow Ridge exhaled, a breath long held, heavy with secrets, now at last set free.